Led your emotion. The edge of power, you don't rise and fall by what happens to you. You rise and fall by how you manage what happens within you. Your circumstances don't define you. Your state does. The one who wins isn't the one who never feels pressured. It's the one who feels it all: fear, doubt, frustration, and still moves forward with clarity, still speaks with purpose, still leads. Most people don't realize it, but they're being run by their emotions. They think they're thinking. They think they're choosing, but really, they're reacting to a current beneath the surface. Point one insult, and their energy collapses. Point one delay, and their mood shifts. Point one moment of tension, and they spiral. Not because they're weak, but because they've never trained their response. Emotional control is not suppression, that it's leadership, that it's feeling the storm but staying grounded in it, that it's not about pretending the emotion doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let it drive. You feel it, you observe it, but you don't become it. That's power, that's the edge, that's what separates those who break down from those who break through. Because life won't pause for your feelings. The world won't stop throwing punches. The pressure won't wait until you're ready. Those who rise are not unfeeling, that they're trained, that they've built systems, that they've rehearsed discipline until it became reflex. They don't need perfect circumstances to execute. They show up anyway. You don't need to be emotionless. You need to be self-led. Emotion is not the enemy. Untrained emotion is. Emotions carry intelligence, feedback, wisdom, memory. But if you don't lead them, they'll lead you. They'll steer your decisions, your relationships, your reactions. You want control? Then stop avoiding what you feel. Most people run from discomfort. They numb fear, suppress anger, collapse under guilt, or unleash all three. But emotion isn't meant to be avoided. It's meant to be understood. You don't flinch when it comes. You lead. You feel it, but you stay grounded. You name it, but you don't obey it. You pause. You breathe. You regulate. That pause, that breath, is where the power lives. Not in avoiding emotion, but in interrupting the loop. Every emotion is a story. Anger says they're wrong. Fear says you're not enough. Guilt says you failed, but you're not the story. You are the narrator. You stop. You scan. What am I feeling? Where's in my body? What narrative is trying to take over? And then you choose something different. You act not from the spike, but from the standard. Because every reaction is a rehearsal. Every flinch becomes a habit. Every escape becomes a script. And if you want to change your life, you have to rewrite that script. Start small. In the moment of irritation, in the heat of a conversation. When you feel that rising wave, you stay. You don't perform. You don't pretend. You just breathe, hold your posture, and stay. And every time you do that, your system learns. We're safe. We can hold this. We don't need to run. This isn't silence, it's leadership. This isn't numbness, it's structure. Suppression is stuffing it down. Control is carrying it well. You feel the wave, and you stay on your feet. That's what makes you dangerous. Not because you never feel, but because you don't fold. This work rewires your nervous system. You stretch your emotional window. You build resilience, not from reading about it, but by living through it. Discomfort becomes the gym. That tension is your training ground, where others retreat. You lean in, not because you're fearless, but because you're trained. And now, your emotions don't lead your life. You do. And here's the truth. Emotional control doesn't get built in solitude. That IT gets tested in conflict. You think you've grown until someone presses that old button. Until someone mirrors the version of yourself you thought you'd outgrown. That's the moment, that's the test. And how you handle it? That's who you really are. You don't get to say, they made me snap. No, you responded. Now own it. Because ownership is power. Responsibility is leadership. And no one can lead their life while blaming others for their reactions. You want control? Then build boundaries. Not just with others, but within yourself. Boundaries around what gets your energy, what triggers your response, what earns your attention. That it's not about being cold. It's about being centered. You can be fiery and focused. You can be passionate and precise. You can be intense and still lead yourself with calm clarity. You don't wait for peace to stay calm. You create peace from the inside out. You don't need everyone to agree. You don't need closure. You don't need to be understood to. Hold your standard, because that standard is no longer emotional, that it's identity. And your identity is not built in ease, that it's forged in fire. The fire of staying present when you want to disappear, that of speaking with clarity when your voice shakes, that of holding your breath steady when everything in you wants to collapse. This is not a trait. It's a trained muscle. You build it with reps. You rehearse it in small moments. You keep your word when your mood doesn't match it. You speak calmly when it's easier to explode. You move forward when hesitation screams. And eventually, you trust yourself because you've watched yourself lead through chaos, because you've chosen alignment over reaction again and again. This is the edge. This is what separates the few who rise from the many who repeat, that you're not trying to feel nothing, that you're building the ability to feel everything and still lead. The pressure doesn't disappear, but it doesn't control you anymore, that IT reveals you. And the version it reveals is solid, steady, dangerous in the best way. Because emotional control isn't optional, that it's foundational. Without it, your discipline crumbles, your focus shatters, your leadership collapses. But with it, you don't just lead others, you lead yourself. And that is the most powerful force on the planet.